Okay, so today we're going to be talking about checks and balances, but before we do that, we need to review real quick a little bit about separation of powers. And so as you look at this, if you'll remember, separation of powers is talking about three branches of government, and each of them have separate powers. So the legislative branch, this is the first branch, their main power is to make laws, so you should write that down on your notes. The executive branch, their main power is to enforce the laws. Their main job to do is to enforce the laws. And then the judicial branch, their main thing is to interpret the laws, which kind of includes administering justice and kind of determining, is the law that's been made, does it fit within the bounds of the Constitution? And we call that particular aspect of interpreting the law, we call that judicial review. And that's a really important one, so I'm going to have you write it down next to where it says interpret the laws as well. So judicial review. Now I know you may have a hard time seeing all of this that I'm writing because my handwriting's messy and everything, but you pause the video if it needs to get people a chance to catch up and get these notes done. All right, so separation of powers. So these are the main powers, but within that we have what we call a system of checks and balances. And it might actually be better. It's not checks and balances makes it sound like it's two different things, but really what we have are checks on power that help to balance the power. Okay, what does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. It's Congress's job, the legislative branch's job, to make the laws. But they cannot make any law without approval of the president. The president has a check on the legislative branch's job. No laws are passed without his approval unless, and this is the check that they have on his power, unless they can get 2/3 of a vote in both the House and the Senate, and then they can override his veto. So one check on the legislative branch is the executive branch's power to veto. It can pass laws, so he has the power to veto. So right here it says the president can veto congressional legislation, and that's really like his main power over them, is the power to veto. Congress has a lot of powers over really the executive branch and to a certain extent over the judicial branch because they're the ones that are most closely related to the people. We elect the members of the House of Representatives. We elect the members of the Senate. And the House of Representatives in particular, they're elected very regularly, every 2 years. And so they're most closely associated with the will of the people. And so they've kind of been given a little bit more power over these other branches. And these powers they have over them are checks. So Congress has to approve presidential nominations. Congress has control over the budget. So those are the big checks that Congress has on the executive branch's power. The judicial branch. Well, the judicial branch, we said, their main power is to interpret the laws, which includes the power of judicial review. Well, they can declare presidential acts unconstitutional. They can say, no, that doesn't follow the Constitution. You cannot do that. And so therefore that act anything that the president does that is declared unconstitutional, well, that would have to be then stopped. So like an executive action would then be no longer enforced. The same thing with the laws that the legislative branch passes. The judicial branch can declare those unconstitutional. Now, what are their checks? Both the executive branch and the legislative branch, what is their checks on the judicial branch? Well, the president, he gets to nominate all federal judges. He picks who is even possible to be a judge. So nobody becomes a judge without the president's approval. Now, once the president picks you, you have that position for life. Or unless you're impeached for some kind of, miscarriage of justice, unless you're, breaking the law yourself or something like that. But the president's picks have to be approved by the Congress. So the Congress has a check on the judicial branch as well because the Senate in particular, they have to confirm those appointments. And then, as it says here, they can impeach judges and remove them from office for misconduct. Okay, so those are the key checks on these branches. So you've got the checks are all listed here, and you see there's other checks on power, but these are the main ones. These are really the main ones you need to know. And the purpose of the checks and balances system, just like the purpose of the separation of powers, is to keep one branch from becoming too powerful. And so no one branch can make a law, enforce the law, interpret the law, because those powers have been separated. But even within that, then we have checks on the power that you do have. The other branches have something to say about how you do your part of legislating or of carrying out government and making good government work. Each branch has something to say about what the other branches can do. So that's checks and balances. Okay, so today in class, you should have written these notes in. You should use this. So you've done the Bill of Rights hand signals. You've practiced that. The next two things that you're going to do today, you are going to finish up your Ed Puzzle video. If you have not finished that, if you got a bad grade on the Ed Puzzle video, have the substitute reset the video for you. They can reset it for you, and you can go back through and do it again. Make sure you take your time so you get a passing grade on that. And then once you've done with all of those things, you can then get on the iPad and play the game from iCivics that we played the other day called Do I Have a Right? And it is on the iPad. There's an app. And so that's what you're to do today. Y'all have a great day.